What is going on, everybody? My name is John Solo, and welcome to another episode of Star Wars 101. Today we are talking about one of the grossest species to have ever slithered across the Star Wars galaxy, the Hutts, and I want to dive right into it right after giving a shout out to today's sponsor, Geek Fuel. Geek Fuel is of course the subscription service that sends you a box filled with over $50 of geeky goodness every single month. Every box includes a t-shirt, a downloadable Steam game, and if you sign up through my URL, your first month will include a free Star Wars bonus pack. I will admit there are plenty of other services out there very similar to Geek Fuel. That being said, I've tried a whole lot of them, and in my opinion, Geek Fuel is the one that gives you the most bang for your buck, so I wanted to give them a shout out today. Moving on, let's get to the facts. Number 1. Jabba the Hutt is certainly the most famous of the Hutts, but we get the chance to see many other members of his species in the Clone Wars. Unlike Jabba, they look a lot more like the archetypical gangsters you see in old school movies. This is probably because the Clone Wars is a show for kids, but what's interesting is that despite them looking a little more cartoony, they have the same origins as the first Hutt we ever saw. George Lucas's initial concept for Jabba began as a desire to create a Sultan-like character who was feared for his size, power, and status among commoners. Characters like Sidney Greenstreet in The Maltese Falcon and Marlon Brando in The Godfather were the inspiration for Jabba's design. You can definitely see a resemblance between Jabba and those two characters, but the gangster-like features are far more prominent in the accessories that the other Hutts on the Grand Hutt Council wear. Number 2. It might surprise you to know that despite negative stereotypes, not all Hutts are obese. Now don't get me wrong, almost all of them are, not just obese, but huge, sometimes as big as a house. But there is one Hutt that seems to be the exception to most of these rules, and that's a fella named Gracchus the Hutt. He was an antique collector who lived on Nar Shaddaa. He was the swollest of all Hutts and actually had a set of cybernetic legs. There's also Huttlets, which are baby Hutts. They start out barely taller than a foot and are both adorable and disgusting at the same time. Number 3. Jabba may only weigh about 3,000 pounds in universe, but the model they used for him in Return of the Jedi was made out of 4 tons of clay. In addition to that, they also used foam latex and a giant oven that used to be a safe. The craziest part about the Jabba model is that because the materials they used to make it were so toxic, they had to use breathing apparatuses, goggles, gloves, and protective suits. Number 4. Obviously, Jabba was pretty huge. So huge, in fact, that it took 3 people to operate him. One person operated his tail, another controlled his head and left arm, and a third controlled his right arm, mouth, and said Jabba's lines into a headset where they played over the PA system. All 3 operators had to climb through a hole underneath Jabba's body, and they had to sit inside of the Hutt from 8:30 a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m., only breaking for lunch. That is a lot of time to spend together inside of a giant space lug, so I hope the guys liked each other. Number 5. The Hutts have scattered across the galaxy, but the planet they call home is now Hutta. It's a hot, swampy planet in the outer rim that's covered in bogs. Not to mention, literal grease rains down from the clouds above. It was first depicted in the Clone Wars series, and Dave Filoni followed George Lucas's specific instructions for its design. Number 6. Hutts tend to project confidence, and that's for good reason. When it comes to power, authority, etc., they're sitting comfortably at the top of the hierarchy. But as it turns out, there's one thing that most Hutts are very insecure about: their hair, or lack thereof. To cover up their baldness, some Hutts wear hair pieces on their heads made from animals called Shirelian toops. Marlo the Hutt can be seen wearing one in the Clone Wars series. Same with Jabba's grandmother, aka Zero's mother, who goes by Mama. She stacks an impressive 23 creatures on top of her head, which gives Donald Trump a run for his money. Number 7. The Hutts are infamous for being incredibly wealthy, but did you know that their wealth is not measured in Republic credits? They actually use their own form of currency for all of their illegal dealings. It's called Whoopie Yuppie, and yes, that's the right pronunciation. Here's what some of the various coins looked like. Each one had a Hutt code of trade engraved on the back. Number 8. Remember the Mos Espa pod race from The Phantom Menace? Of course you do. It's widely accepted as one of the best scenes in the entire Star Wars saga. One detail some folks might not remember is that the race took place during the holiday known as Boonta Eve. Boonta Eve was a celebration created by the Hutts to honor the one and only of their kind that they felt ascended to godhood after death. His name, as you might expect, was Boonta Histilic Shadru. Number 9. We have talked about the amazing sounds of Star Wars many times on this channel, but every time I bring up the subject, I'm even more impressed with sound designer Ben Burtt. During production of Return of the Jedi, he was given the task of coming up with a disgusting sound for Jabba's movements, and he decided to go with a homemade meal prepared by his wife. In his own words, he described the sound as macaroni and cheese being fondled in a bowl. Personally, I couldn't couldn't think of a more appropriate choice. Number 10. Both before and during the Galactic Civil War, the Hutts had total control over the galaxy's criminal underworld. But after the war, they fell from grace and were replaced by Nikto crime cartels. The reasoning behind their fall is largely due to space politics. The two main political parties that made up the New Republic, the centrists and the populists, both disliked the Hutts and had no tolerance for their illegal activities. As a result, they swiftly shut them down after the New Republic was formed. And with that, I want to say thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it and learned a little something, make sure you hit that like button down below. Also subscribe and turn notifications on for weekly Star Wars videos, and check out another episode of Star Wars 101 right over here. As always, my name is John Solo, and may the Force be with you.